In a world steeped in wonder and mystery, one enigma stands above them all, a riddle that has puzzled minds throughout the ages. The Garden of Eden, a hallowed realm where the first man and woman once walked, beckons humanity with its tantalizing secrets. Join us on a journey of exploration as we venture into the depths of history, seeking the elusive answer to the question that has echoed through time: where exactly is the Garden of Eden? There was a first man and a first woman a very long time ago, back when the echoes of old times were still faint and murky. They strolled under the refreshing shade of the verdant trees, while being around verdant vegetation, bountiful trees, and friendly animals. The region was supplied with water by a large river that began its course there, and eventually split into 4 other major rivers that flowed through the Middle East. According to the Bible, there was a name for this location. It was known as Eden at the time. As a result, the Bible tells us that eastward in Eden, God planted a garden. He then placed the man and the woman there and commanded them to dwell there, have children, and rule over the land. There was a particular tree in the garden that was called the Tree of Life. The Garden of Eden is one of the few spots in the history of the globe that can conjure up such vivid mental pictures. Poets and philosophers have been moved to create by its serene beauty, and both have endeavored to find equilibrium in their unique ways through the development of utopian notions. Still, others employ the allegory of Eden to refer to a state of political and social harmony. Yossi Klein Halevi, a journalist living in Israel, once wrote about a legend that was recounted in the Zohar, which is the primary source of Jewish mysticism. Halevi was on a mission to find a solution that would lead to peace in that region. Abraham visits the burial site of Adam and Eve at one point in the story. When he gets there, he discovers a doorway that leads to the Garden of Eden. His eyes get riveted, and his heart yearns to reside there for the rest of his life. For those of us who believe in the Bible, Eden, along with other significant locations in the Bible, becomes a place where geography and theology join together to create an astounding drama in which God acts as both the divine playwright and the leading character. The Garden of Eden serves as a setting not only for the commencement of the most important story ever written, but also for the fulfillment of the promise that the story will have a happy ending. A paradise-like manifestation. The story that is given in Genesis makes it quite obvious that the Garden of Eden was not only aesthetically stunning, but also ecologically ideal. It is also very clear that the Bible refers to it as a real existent site, although it provides only tantalizing suggestions as to the precise location of the site. According to the traditional interpretation, which is presented in Merrill Unger's commentary on the Old Testament, the Sumerian roots of the term Eden imply that the Garden of Eden was located somewhere in the oldest cultural strata of Mesopotamia, likely at the head of the Persian Gulf. This point of view was expressed by archaeologist Uris Zarins during an interview with Smithsonian Magazine. This viewpoint is bolstered to some extent by geographical evidence. According to Genesis 2:10-14, Eden is the place from which the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers draw their initial waters. These 2 rivers, along with the Pishon and Gihon rivers, all originated from the same place, which is referred to as Eden in verses 11 and 13. This conventional idea is supported by the fact that both the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers still exist today and flow into the Persian Gulf. The difficulty arises from the fact that neither the Pishon nor the Gihon exist as distinct geographical entities at present. Based on satellite imagery, Uris Zarins hypothesizes that the Pishon is the fossilized riverbed of Wadi Batin, which runs through Saudi Arabia, and that the Gihon is the Karun River, which originates in Iran and flows into the Gulf. Both of these rivers flow toward the Persian Gulf. On the other hand, there is compelling evidence that suggests a relationship between Eden and Jerusalem. To conclude that the site of modern-day Jerusalem may have been the location of the Garden of Eden, we must first find a solution to the problem of the 4 rivers, as neither the Tigris nor the Euphrates rivers now flow into Israel at present. There is a belief that the massive deluge that Noah experienced wiped out or, in some cases, redirected the natural flow of rivers and other geological features. When we consider the devastation caused by a single tsunami that struck recently in the Indian Ocean on a single day, we can begin to conceptualize the power of a global deluge that lasted for 40 days. There is evidence both in the Bible and in the language that Jerusalem is connected to the Garden of Eden. Lawrence E. Steger, an archaeologist at Harvard, observes that throughout the time of the United Monarchy in Israel, there were strong suggestions of a relationship between the two cultures. In an essay that was published in the journal Biblical Archaeology Review, he makes the point that when Solomon's temple was constructed on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the iconography and architectural characteristics harken back to several aspects of the original paradise. God stationed angelic cherubim at the eastern entrance of the Garden of Eden after the fall of man to prevent anybody from approaching the tree of life. Compare this to the temple that Solomon built, which was adorned with ornate depictions of cherubim. There is compelling evidence to imply that, similar to the Garden of Eden, the temple, also known as the House of God, was filled with trees and other forms of vegetation. Ezekiel 31, 8-9 refers to the trees that are located in the Garden of God, and verse 16 makes the connection between those trees and the trees of Eden, the choice and best of Lebanon. It is abundantly clear that this is not a reference to an Eden that formerly existed in Saudi Arabia or the Persian Gulf. In the essay that Jimmy DeYoung wrote for the issue of Israel My Glory that was published in November-December 2004, he referred to the fact that in Ezekiel 28, 14 and 16, the phrase Mountain of God refers to the Temple Mount, which is associated with the Garden of Eden. In Ezekiel 28:13, the same location is referred to as being in Eden, the Garden of God. Finally, in a letter that was recently sent to the editors of Bar, Rabbi Bernard Bloom stated that the enigmatic Gihon River that is mentioned in the book of Genesis may not have been lost after all. In fact, it is connected with Jerusalem. Gihon was the name of the city of Jerusalem's primary spring and water source under the reign of David. In addition, King David instructed his slaves to bring his son Solomon to the Gihon stream so that he may be anointed as the new king. A place of decision and judgment. However, to paraphrase the English poet John Milton, the purity of Eden finally turned into paradise lost. Eve's willingness to be deceived and the couple's direct disobedience to God's eternal command in deference to temporal enticement are shockingly reminiscent of all of our universal struggles with sin, as we fight against the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. What had once been a perfect relationship of communion between God and man, woman and nature, has been shattered and deformed as a result. In addition to being the Creator, Nurturer, and Almighty Father, God also fulfills the role of holy and just judge. If His crystal clear, flawless moral code had not been inextricably linked to consequences and punishment, it would have been devoid of any substance and devoid of all purpose. As a result of sin, God transformed the verdant paradise that was full of peace into a venue for the carrying out of judgment. Now think about how the High King of the cosmos administers divine justice. What must it be like to fall into the hands of that holy God Himself, who must carry out judgment, since the prophets and virtuous men of old fell to their knees at the appearance of angels who had come from the very presence of God? In this regard as well, there is a direct link to Jerusalem. Because of his wrongdoing, the first Adam faced the wrath of God in the Garden of Eden. Later, at the end of Jesus' time on earth, God imposed judgment in Jerusalem by causing His own Son, the second Adam, to be wrongfully arrested, charged, and convicted because of the sin that we had all committed. This was God's way of punishing Jerusalem for our sins. A grace that will console you. The tale, fortunately for us, does not conclude with judgment and retribution being handed down. As a generous act of mercy, God covered the couple's disgrace with animal skins, thereby foreshadowing the requirement of shedding blood as a means of atonement for sin. The Lord also promised triumph over the power of Satan, who is shown as a snake with demonic and seductive qualities. When speaking to the serpent, God declared, "He, the Redeemer, shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." This is an unmistakable reference to Jesus, the Messiah who was prophesied, and the perfect Lamb who was sacrificed. And even though Adam and Eve were kicked out of Eden and the door was locked, we are aware that the great hero of this tale will eventually make his appearance. The purpose of the first appearance of the King of Kings was to fulfill the prophecy of Genesis 3:15, which called for him to triumph over the authority of Satan, the agony of death, and the apparent invincibility of sin. Back to the future. The Bible makes it abundantly clear that there will be a future end of days and an eternal kingdom in which God will reign. His Son will be glorified, and he who have believed in the name and in the blood sacrifice of Jesus shall abide. This information can be found in the Bible. Heavenly Jerusalem is going to be created by God. Some of its characteristics will be very recognizable, such as a significant river that originates at the throne of God, just like in the first Eden. It will water a unique tree, the tree of life, from the Garden of Eden, which suddenly reappears and will give its fruit and heal the nations with the leaves of its branches. The long-lasting peace in Jerusalem, which will have eluded us all during the entirety of all these millennia, will at long last be accomplished. And when we are there, basking in the glory and love of Him who wooed us to salvation and walking the paths of His future garden city, I can just imagine looking past the smiling faces of the millions of His children and seeing the faces of one man and one woman who are standing quietly off to the side by that great tree. And when we are there, basking in the glory and love of Him who wooed us to salvation, we will be walking the paths of His future garden city, and in their faces I recognize, however hazily, the features of everyone I have ever met. And the man and woman are grinning at one another as if to say, "So you see, the Lord has brought us, all of His children, all the way back home to be with Him in His wonderful garden after all, hasn't He? Just like He said He would." That's all for the video today. We will be right back with more. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.